Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the January 23rd, 2018 school committee meeting here at Tyngsborough High School. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We will start with introductions. We also have the finance committee here with us this evening, so we'd like to ask them to introduce themselves as we go around, and we will start to my right with Mr. Messina.
Thank you. Joe Messina, Business Administrator.
Sharon Fairbanks, Amy Pazarski,
Ryan McMahon.
Robert Mullen.
Paul Mitchell.
Anthony Tenorella.
Mike Flanagan, Superintendent.
Mark Ranko, Assistant Superintendent.
Mike Moran.
Julie Cristucci,
Corey O'Neill, Student Representative.
Bert Bushman, FinCom Chair.
Daryl Wickens.
Billy Crawford.
I think I would like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I will take
Yes. Bert, you guys would like to come into session?
I'll take a motion to bring the Finance Committee into session.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Darrell. Second by Bill. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, that carries 3-0. We are now in session.
Thank you. Cool. I'd like to get a motion to approve the January 9th, 2018 school committee meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Correspondence.
Mr. Chair, just one piece of correspondence. Approximately a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, I was contacted by the president of EFT, and I wanted to let the committee know that myself, building administrators, as well as Dr. Branco, we had a meeting with some of our parent groups last week, EFT, PTO, and TST, and we are going to send a letter to parents in the district soliciting volunteerism and soliciting groups or people to step up and potentially join these boards, join these committees, or offer their services to volunteer in some way. I think one of the things is we rely on PTO and EFT and TST for their tremendous support for our kids, and I think they're having a difficult time getting people to step up. So we're going to make an impassioned plea to the community to solicit as much support for these important organizations as we can. So that communication will be coming out Thursday of this week.
Could I ask you to remind people what EFT and TST stand for?
Sure. The Education Foundation of Tyngsborough is EFT, and they provide a grant program for our teachers throughout the district. TST is a Tyngsborough Scholarship Trust. Their primary mission is to support our graduating seniors with scholarships. PTO is a parent-teacher organization. They primarily live in our elementary school. They do a lot of work in the middle school as well, and they do student support activities and student support groups. But they're all integral parts of our school community, and anything we can do to solicit support for them is certainly important.
All right, thank you. Visitors, comments, and questions? Seeing none. Share the success.
Okay. Over at the Tyngsborough Elementary School, they are participating in the Global Kindness Initiative. The Great Kindness Initiative is the 10 million students from over 90 countries learn what it means to be kind at the elementary school level. Students are given kindness checklists to follow throughout their day for this whole week, and classes have made friendship bracelets and bus driver appreciation letters so far. Over at the middle school, the theater department is working hard ahead of its main stage musical, Urinetown, which opens up February 2nd. The annual geography bee occurred, in which every 7th grader got to participate to quiz their knowledge, and a few members of the grade 6 to 12 band visited the Boston Symphony Orchestra as special guests. Over at the high school, in Miss Silva's Spanish class, students were able to Skype a pen pal from Argentina to learn about culture and customs. Additionally, members of the high school robotics team attended the Ball workshop at UMass Lowell. Congratulations to the January Students of the Month, Sydney Holman, Jessica Howard, Don Mealy, and Matthew Pomprine. And She Loves Me, THS Theater Annual Dinner Theater with partnership from the Education Foundation opens this Friday at the Old Town Hall. That is all.
Perfect, thank you. Number 6, subcommittee updates. Capital Assets Subcommittee.
Thank you very much. We met this evening just prior to this current meeting. Amy, myself, Superintendent Flanagan, sorry about that, zoning again, and Mr. George Triarchis. We received, Mr. Triakis and Mr. Flanagan received a cost estimate on the asbestos abatement for the middle school. That came in at $678,000, and that is just for the removal of all the asbestos. That does not include any replacement of any of the ceiling tiles that we discussed at our last meeting. So in this discussion, we decided that we were going to recommend to the rest of the committee that we put off the abatement work until we have a much better idea for the building itself, where we would be with a replacement for it, and just hold off on that for now, just because of that large number. Mr. Flanagan, do you have anything you wanted to say to that?
I think as Mr. Triakis alluded to, once you start abating ceiling tiles, you pour new money into new ceiling tiles, but it also then disrupts the insulation. If you have to pull the insulation out, then you're looking at a project that becomes expansive. Why would you put old lights back into a new ceiling with new insulation and not go LED? So it starts at $600,000, $700,000, and it just kind of grows from there. So the thought was, and George has some literature on this, that we're better off maintaining what we have than we are piecemealing it or phasing a project of abatement over the life of that building.
See, I don't do it just to you. The other item that we discussed was placing in an application for an accelerated repair of windows at the old Lakeview School. This is a project that's really been, it's been needed in that building for quite a while. Fortunately, the Valley Collaborative has informed us that they would like to stay there long term. They like the facility, and so we think that it's something that we should start doing, is putting a little bit of money into that building, and with the accelerated repair, that is something, if we get approved for that, that's something that could start this summer. And if done properly, there would be no cost to the taxpayers for this. I think I think depending on how we apply for this, I think the fact that it's a collaborative building at this point, it's used for special education of students. I think that the likelihood of this being approved is high at this point. Mr. Flanagan, did you have anything else on this?
I would just like to stress and reiterate there would be no cost to the taxpayer. So essentially how this would work, we would seek MSBA support for an accelerated repair of the windows at the Lakeview School. Depending upon what the reimbursement rate from MSBA would be, we have Lakeview lease money that's in a revolving account that we would use to offset the cost of the windows. So we would not want to bring a project to the taxpayers of this community knowing that we are looking for a middle school project at some point in the future. Certainly if the cost was prohibitive and we couldn't go to the taxpayers or we couldn't afford it based on what we have in our current revolving account and what MSBA reimbursement would be, at that point we would look at a phase into the project. We would do potentially one section of the school with windows, or look to somehow partner with Valley to see if they would be interested in supporting the project with us as well. So I think the good thing is Valley Collaborative is very interested in maintaining that building and staying in that building for the long term. That being said, I think we need to maximize our opportunity to enhance that facility so that we're not stuck with another Winslow school down the road that's just abandoned and not taken care of. So we believe that we need to first address the windows before we look at the HVAC in that building. So the goal would be to partner again with Valley and get an accelerated repair so that we can address the windows there.
Excuse me, is this appropriate time for me to ask a question about the Lakeview School?
Sure.
Okay, I had written a question here. How much longer are we encumbered to pay off the state debt? We borrowed money over there with state funding. When does that paid off?
I would defer to the town's finance director for any bonding questions.
Right.
We don't have that information.
So you don't know how much longer the debt is over there?
I do not.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And that's all I had tonight.
All right, thank you. Policy Subcommittee. Julie.
The policy subcommittee met tonight, myself, Ryan, and I'm not even gonna try to say his last name, Paul Mitchell, and Dr. Branco, and we reviewed 5 policies. These will be for the school committee members, they'll be in your Dropbox for you to review, and next meeting we'll be doing first read on these policies. I just wanna briefly go through them. We have policy 5.30 is the student transportation fees. This is gonna be removed because at this point, there's no student transportation fees, and it will be reinstated if necessary. Policy 2.5, fees for use of school facilities, this is just a reaffirm. There's no changes on this policy. And then policy 1.19, school calendar, religious holidays and district goals. Policy 1.7 and policy 1.6, mission, vision statement will be a first read. And the other one too. And that's it.
Thank you, Julie. We do have to go back to Rob.
Thank you very much. One thing that I did forget to bring up, there is a deadline of February 14th for the accelerated program. We have to get the application in. And so we're gonna need a discussion and a vote on whether we're gonna back that this evening so that we have time to get our paperwork in front of the Board of Selectmen because they have to sign off on that and be able to get that application in on time.
The question would be the application is for a full, for all the windows at the
Yes,
school
at this time,
at this
exactly,
point.
yes.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification, there are two different projects reviewed by MSBA. There's an accelerated repair program and there's a core building project. We would still prioritize Tyngsborough Middle School as our #1 priority for Tyngsborough as our core building project. This is an ancillary project that would still be just in the queue, much like we did the roof, the accelerated repair here at the high school. So it's separate pools.
So could I get a motion? Or does anybody have anything else to, any questions or comments in regards to? No? Could I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I just second it.
To have the administration submit a proposal for accelerated repair.
Exactly, yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I carry 700. Thank you, Paul, for putting all the words in there for us. Number 7, personnel. Dr. Flanagan.
2 quick personnel actions. We have a notification for request maternity leave, Rebecca Erickson, preschool teacher at the elementary school, and notification of retired Joseph Beebe, elementary school paraprofessional for 19+ years. Information only.
All right. Good luck to both of them. Unfinished business.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I want to thank the Finance Committee for being here. I think it's important that we have this conversation and dialogue. I feel that the selectmen have, Matt and I have met regularly, and the selectmen have, Matt has direct access, so I feel like to bring you into this meeting is important so that we're all on the same page moving forward. So this is our first pass on initial budget, and the presentation, I promise you that I will not read word for word on the next 38 pages, but I think it's important that we kind of go through it and I give you an update as to where we are, how we arrived at where we are, and point out some of the key actions in here, some of the key figures as directed by the Tyngsborough School Committee. Just to back up, and I apologize if this is redundant for the committee, but I think it's important for the parents at home to hear this as well. What we've done, this entire budget presentation, is driven by our strategy for district improvement. We made a commitment in an entry plan that we brought to this district about over a year and a half ago. We solicited input from the stakeholders of the district, says, what do we value? Where do we want to go as a district? So we took the information from all our stakeholders, and the administrative team and the teachers collectively created an entry plan and a strategy for district improvement. And we are driven by 3 key factors. We are committed as a school system to meet the needs of all students We're committed to providing rigorous and consistent curriculum for our students, and we're committed to improving professional practice. Those are what we call our big rocks. Every decision we make in this district needs to come back to those big rocks. So that being said, as we began conversations about the budget in December, the committee asked us and tasked us with presenting tonight a budget that was educationally sound but fiscally responsible. This is not a wish list budget. This is a type budget that we've worked very hard to meet a number on. And we were in a different situation this year. We were probably in a better situation this year where we're not waiting for a percentage of a revenue number to come out. We knew in October that we were allotted 2.28% growth over last year's operating budget. So we knew that we had to come in at about $450,000. We did the very best we could over last year's operating budget to present what we need. But the fact is, these are the needs for this school district. So I want to take you through the budget now, highlight some things, and be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I think going forward, the school committee will vote on this at our next meeting on February 6th. So we have 2 weeks to review it and answer any questions you may have, and that'll be the adoption of the initial budget. So that being said, if we begin, the first few pages are just kind of an overview and pretty much what I just said. And if we go to page 7, the first section of the book is our expenses. So as we look at the summary expenses, as we know, over 8% of our biggest costs are salaries. So what I want to point out here is you will notice at the bottom, our FY18 FTE. We currently have 263.6 employees. We also have one position that is unfilled. So we have budgeted for right now 264.6 employees. As we look to bring forward next year's budget, you'll see that we're recommending 254.2 employees. That's a reduction of 10.4 positions. Of those positions, 6 of those positions are budget neutral. 6 of those positions come about with the elimination of daycare. Daycare was a self-funded program, so that was a budget neutral move. The other 4.4 positions, 4 of them would be from a restructuring of our middle school. As I go back to our December, January conversations, our early January conversations, the committee asked that we look at class size and we look at what we can do strategically to, again, be educationally sound but fiscally responsible. We believe that we potentially could restructure our middle school and reduce the staffing pattern there by 4 positions. So we have some data in the back of the book that everyone can look at, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the presentation. But the overall number of reduction for FTEs is 10.4 positions. And again, as we talk about staying in line, that's the biggest area of cost for us. On page 8, we talk about our line item additional expenses. There are 3 line items I specifically want to draw the committee's attention to. Special education. We know that we talked about increasing special education throughout our PowerPoints. This, believe it or not, does reflect everything we wanted to do with special education based on our conversations. And the reason the number didn't grow as much as we thought it was going to is because we had some students age out of the district. We also had some contracted services come in lower than anticipated. So this accomplishes us, and this protects everything we need to do for all of our students moving forward, but it's not as high as we potentially thought it might be when we had conversations in January. The next line item is district-wide budget. You see, district-wide budget went up by $120,000. Approximately $80,000 of that is our bus contract, which again came in much higher than anticipated over last year. The other $40,000, and Joe can go into a little bit more detail about this, is an increase in utilities. So Joe, you want to talk about transportation and utilities going up?
Sure. I think transportation, the superintendent pretty much did highlight the number. We were at the end of a 3-year contract during last budget cycle. We were paying $310.50 per bus per day. We budgeted what we thought was a healthy increase to $329 per day. The actual one bid that we received from our one vendor was $365 a day. We did ask them to look really hard at that number, and they did reduce it by about 2% to $358 per day. but the difference between $329 and $358 per day for our fleet is approximately $80,000. In terms of utilities, due to the tight budgets for the last couple of years, we had level funded our utility line items without recognizing the new utility rates. So this year, I took a hard look at the new electricity rates that had been paying for the last 3 years to get the FY17 actual, a full year of actual data, and project that out into next year's budget to give us a better, no potential issue with our utility lines based upon the current rates. So that's approximately a $40,000 increase there.
Thanks, Joe. The next line item that I'd like you to look at is district-wide teaching and learning cycle. You see that it went from 0 to 30 to $97,000. I assure you, it is not a $67,000 increase. The $30,000 in that line item, as the committee knows, this year was attributed to our new science curriculum program that we rolled out. The increase in $67,000, the bulk of that, $47,000 of that, is a reassignment of line items that already exist in our schools under the district-wide teaching, learning, and cycle. So essentially, all decisions about curriculum and textbooks moving forward will be under the supervision of the assistant superintendent, as opposed to at each building level. So $47,000 of that $67,000 is already in our budget. That's just rolling over. The $20,000 of new money is new money to address our math curriculum this year. As we talked about over the past several years, and part of what came out of our entry plan is we need to really look at our math curriculum. So we looked at science last year, math this year, next year it'll be ELA. So $20,000 of increased money in that line is specific to addressing our math curriculum issues in the district. So if you go to the next page, page 9, you'll see the summary of total expenses for the school is $22,657,068. So now let's move to the revenues. Joe, if you want to talk a little bit about page 11, some of our revenues from grants, page 11 and 12, Joe, if you want to talk.
Sure, and I appreciate the fact that you do the expenses and I get to do the revenues because the revenues are the nice thing to talk about for the most part. In terms of the grant revenue, what we generally do when we budget our grant revenue is we take the current fiscal year that we're in and project out that we will have our grants level funded. FY18's budget reflects what we had available in FY17. FY19 reflects what we currently have in FY18. You can see grant revenue is down. There are some grants, the Special Ed Program Improvement Grant, the state and the federal governments are not funding anymore. Other grants, Title I continues to trend downward. 2A trends downward, and the Special Ed PL 94 grant stayed relatively stable, but overall our grant revenue is down about $32,000 from last year. In terms of the tuition revenues, kindergarten and preschool, we hope will project out evenly. That can fluctuate based upon the number of slots we have available for paid tuition versus those that might be programmatically taken up in terms of any special education needs. Daycare, as the superintendent mentioned, that is expense neutral, revenue neutral. We phase that out. We have no daycare revenue coming in. And the preschool after school program continues to be a very successful program. This is allowing us to utilize that revenue to pick up another half paraprofessional. So that's why you see that number jump up significantly from last year.
So moving forward, you can see page 13 is our revenue from athletics. Essentially, actually no change there. Not essentially, actually no change there in anticipated revenues. Page 14, sped circuit breaker. I'm going to have Mr. Messina talk about that, but I do want to point out that it is a projected that the state is going to drop the reimbursement of circuit breaker from 75% to 65%. So, Joe, if you want to talk about what circuit breaker is in general.
So, Thank you. Circuit breaker, what circuit breaker is designed to do is designed to look at each individual student that we have, that we are providing services to, and look at what that is costing a district compared to the per pupil expenditure, average per pupil expenditure. And then the state, by statute, reimburses the districts 75% of any cost above that number. It's never come in at 75% in the number of years that it's been in place. For the last few years, it's been at 72%. This year is the first year that it's coming in at 65%. So what we do as a committee is we use this year's receipts for next year's budget. So this year's receipts are trending downward to the 287. We anticipate getting that from the state this year for circuit breaker. Next year's receipts would carry you for FY20's budget. And we do that because of the volatility of the funding formula, and it's based upon your population and the services we provide for that. Any change in that, any change in the reimbursement rate, if you're anticipating using those revenues in the same year you get them, you could create a large revenue hole. So it's best to have that 1 year in arrears. It's what the Department of Revenue allows towns, cities and towns to do, keep 1 year in arrears. It's in our best interest to have that 1 year in arrears so we're not caught at any given time with a revenue shortage.
So as we move to page 15, you'll see our summary of revenues there, anticipated $2,377,268.
Can I ask,
Absolutely.
on the foreign exchange program, how are we coming along on that? Is that,
Very good. We're gonna actually have an update at the next meeting.
and
We
that-
just had the Homeland Security interview last week, Mr. Ogden. Things went glowingly at that, so we anticipate being accepted. The process, the timeline of the process isn't great. It could take 3 to 6 months before you're officially approved. So as hopeful as we were to have it in place for next year, we're kind of at the whim of Homeland Security right now approving our application. But
So that is another area where we could be pulling in some revenues.
potentially moving forward. Again, we've done everything we can at this point, and we anticipate fully that we'll be accepted and begin soliciting students.
Okay.
So you've seen our summary expenses, our summary revenue. Section 3 really is, it dives deeper. Section 3 is the cost summary for each cost center, as identified sections 1 through 9. I do want to draw your attention to page 21, and that's the high school budget summary. If you look out in the notes column in blue, you see move to curriculum instruction. Those are the textbook line items throughout all the summary pages that I spoke about earlier in the district-wide teaching and learning cycle. So you can see they're already in the budget, now they're just zeroed out this year. But those are some of the line items. You'll see some under the elementary, you'll see some under the middle. So any adjustments in staffing that we made or line items, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a new or increase. It could be moved somewhere else. And Joe, I think we have that one place else with staffing pattern and counselors.
Yes, if you look at page 26, which is the district-wide summary, you'll note that the adjustment counselor line is zeroed out at the district-wide level. We have moved all of the adjustment and guidance counselors just into a school counselor role. So those two positions are actually moved back to the buildings that they're housed at, one at the elementary and one at the middle school. So you'll see counselors on those two cost centers going up by one. We're not adding a person there, we're just shifting them from one cost center to the one that they actually should belong in.
So now if we go to page 28, this is our budget summary page. This is what everyone is used to seeing. Just to talk through this briefly, you see down at the bottom in red, we have total school expenditures at $22,657,000. That's on page 9. That represents the summary for page 9. You'll see our total revenue of $2,377,000. That's on page 15. For a total school committee budget request of $20,279,800. Under that, you will see that we are also assuming a revenue or a tuition credit of approximately $50,000 from the Valley Collaborative. As we've discussed, Valley Collaborative is a special education collaborative that we are one of 9 sending districts. We're taking a risk, assuming it's going to be $50,000 reimbursement. Over the past 4 years, FY15, we received $93,000 back as a credit. FY16, we received $2,500. FY17, we received $5,700. FY18, we received $132,000. So we anticipate that it'll be at least $50,000 this year in conversations with the Valley Board of Directors. So we're assuming that as a credit at this time. So that would leave our net school committee budget request at $20,229,800. So as we go to look at what was allotted from the town, a $450,000 increase over our number, that would be $20,170,555. That's on the next page. I'm sorry, it's on page 29. So as we bring that down, the bottom line, you can see right now, based on what the town initially projected in October, and that was October, at a 2.28% increase to what this initial budget presents, we are $59,245 over the request, over the recommendation. So again, we've worked diligently, and I do have to recognize the work of the administrative team because they put a lot of time and effort into building this, into really working and refining and looking at things differently. And we tighten the belt, and we can potentially restructure this year. That's a 1-year fix. That's a 1-year fix. You don't get to restructure every single year. So our staffing pattern decreasing by 10.4 this year certainly helped us get to where we are, being just $59,000 out. But we're not there yet. As we move forward, section 5, again, that's just a summary on page 31 of our request. And again, any staffing adjustments is below. And then section 6 is backup information that supports why we believe we have the ability to restructure 4 positions at Tyngsborough Middle School. So there's a lot of information. There's a lot of numbers. Happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Flanagan, what do you
Yes.
think that you have 1,703 students, that's actual enrollment this year? Is that how I read that? 17, 18?
That does not include our district students, but
Right.
yep, in-house
So
students.
what's the anticipated next year, or do you?
So, interesting. We thought it would trend down. However, our census, which just came in, says that we're projecting 10 more preschool students next year than we have currently enrolled this year. And again, with the new development in town, it's really difficult
Yeah, sure.
to even ballpark. They have recommended formulas, and MCOG has specific formulas. We haven't found those formulas to be entirely accurate based on the current development, so it's hard to say.
Dr. Flanagan, first let me thank you and the chair for inviting us tonight. How many out-of-district students do you anticipate for the coming year? 'Cause I know that's been fairly consistent, I think, from year to year, from what I remember.
I want to say it's approximately 40.
No, we've had about 22 and we will have some aging out and that number will go down.
21, right?
Sorry, thank you, 21.
20.
And from my days on the school committee, having followed Chapter 7 very religiously, and seeing, I think most years it's 0.6% increase. So you're talking maybe 7,340,000, 350, something like that. So I know the governor's supposed to be releasing his budget tomorrow, and with supposedly some increase for Chapter 7 don't hold my breath out.
Right.
Dr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Or whoever can answer this. I honestly, I know we're on the finance committee, I feel a little embarrassed, but I don't know what arrangements have been made with the town instead of the school-town split.
Oh, okay.
So we haven't been told.
Sure, oh, I'm sorry. So, all right, so, that was, I guess this summer we had a meeting, we learned that, the revenue share that, had been in place is no longer gonna be in place. I think, and I kind of addressed at the beginning of this book that, that was a formula that seemed to work well at the time, and maybe it's run its course. So we're going a new direction this year, where we're all starting at a needs-based budget and building up from there. So in October, when the 5-year projection came out from the finance director in the town and the town administrator, we saw that we had a 2.28% increase over our current operating budget.
Well, is that 2.28% increase going to change or vary from fiscal year to fiscal year, or?
So for us, based on that projection, again, this was an October projection, that was a fixed rate for us for the next 5 years.
Or for the next 5 years?
That's what it was in the budget. It was different from each department, for each department. And I think, in a positive sense, we're being, we're building a budget like the other departments right now, where we're not being assessed chargebacks, which historically we had been assessed.
I always thought that. I even tried to get them to change the wording.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, remember that last year? You did. You did. Yes, you did.
It's so negative to
Right.
use charging back.
Right,
you
right.
know, charging you back.
That's right, you did.
Come up with a better word than that.
So this year, like every other department, we're starting at a baseline recommendation from the finance director and kind of building up from there. So 2.28% is, it's tough, but we're doing the best we can. I mean, I think we're presenting a budget that's responsible and educationally sound. And we tried to be as conservative as possible. And again, we had the opportunity to potentially restructure. The committee was fully supportive of that, and they want us to be fiscally sound and responsible, so we went in that direction. But we can't do that every year. Based on our current staffing pattern and our enrollment, we feel that we can this year and still provide a quality education for our kids. But I'm not sure we're gonna be able to reduce by 4 teachers every year moving forward. So it resolves the problem this year, but as we start thinking down the road, I don't know if that's gonna work. So we'll just have to play it by year, so. But that's where we are in terms of needs-based versus the revenue split. And everyone was talking about in the community, the 68.75 versus 70, 80, it's all gone. We're starting like every other department, which I think public perception-wise is great for the schools. I think
I completely agree.
we're the biggest elephant at the watering hole, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, is everyone here familiar with the other needs of what the town is looking to get? I mean, for instance, a public safety building that they're pursuing.
Mhm.
I'm just talking about the costs, the school costs, the town costs.
Yep.
Because I'm not a townie or a schoolie.
Yeah,
The money,
the money,
it
one
has to
part,
come from
right,
someplace.
sure.
And there's
sure.
only so much to go around.
Sure. And I'm appreciative that the school committee recognizes that we're one community. And that's why they said, you know what, we need to look at class size, we need to look at how we do things. And again, I have a great administrative team here that was creative, they thought out of the box, and they said, you know what, we can do this is still good for kids.
And everyone should be aware of the proposal for a government charter. It would be changing the way our town works,
Mhm.
going to a strong town manager instead of a town administrator. So I encourage everyone, if you haven't seen it, go on and know what's going on with the town charter.
Right.
And I'm not saying for or against.
Nope.
It's your town.
Be informed,
You
absolutely.
should know that's going on, and there's gonna be an expense to it.
Or call me since I'm on the committee.
Yeah. So,
Dr. Flanagan, let me
Yes.
ask, of all areas, what do you see as potential concern areas for you next year? Say something, if something, God forbid, goes south, where do you see the potential?
so it's a loaded question.
I know it's kind of, yeah, I know the
So,
story as well.
Yes.
so there, I'm not gonna, I don't wanna sit back and say, we don't have this. I wanna highlight and accentuate the positives we do have. There are certain costs that we can't control, special education being one of them, health insurance being one of them. And I get, on a global thing, that hits the whole budget, so I know that impacts our piece of the budget. You know, I would love to see more intervention teachers in our school. I would love to see more technology in our kids' hands. I would love to see library and media specialists throughout our district. I would love to see more than one foreign language offered in our district. I would love to see more technology teachers in our districts, particularly if we're gonna go with a Mass Core program. So there are a lot of things that we can do, that we would like to expand programming for. That being said, we do an outstanding job of what we do have. So as we think about moving forward, and I'm not trying to evade the question, but my job is to say this is a great school system, and it's gonna be a great school system no matter what budget you give us, because we're gonna open the doors in August, and we do the best we can. But there are certain things that we could do better, or more effectively, or more comprehensively.
I can say from having been on the school side for almost 20 years, I mean, it's probably since Ed Reform started in '94, it's been that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been unfortunate.
And just for context sakes, in terms of the percentage increase the schools received in the past 5 years, it's varied. FY15, and Ryan, this was your question last week. FY15, we went up by 3.3%. FY16, we went up by 2.3%. FY17 went up by 3.4. FY18 by 3. So this budget right here, as proposed, represents a 2.6% increase because we're 59,000 out of that 2.28. Can you
And that
explain?
counts in any, I don't know if there's any contract renewals or anything coming in?
It does. We're in negotiations now, and that's got a reserve fund built in for that, yes.
Dr. Flang, I have a question on that 59,000.
Yes,
If you go to page 29,
yep,
so we have the budgeted money from the town of 22,547,000, and then we have our proposed budget of 22,657,000. Why does it have the full budget and doesn't recognize the revenue? Why isn't it just a $20 million number there?
Mr. Messina?
So actually, the 20 million, if you look into the middle of the page,
Yep.
you see the $20 million, that's your budget that the town, would be voted on at a town meeting. If you take the revenue up above of the 2.3 million, right above that,
Yep.
add those two together, it comes to the 22,547,000. So you're not requesting 22,500,000 from the town, you're actually requesting 20,229,800. Because we back out that revenue figure.
Thank you.
And I guess now's the time to plug that. We're very fortunate that Mr. Messina has been doing this budget for 17 years, and I think,
Most
you know,
of them.
I get to sit here and present it, but Joe's the guy behind it, and I, just knows it inside out and cold, and just a tremendous asset throughout this process. Happy to answer any more questions, or,
I don't have any, very comprehensive, thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Good, thank you
You
very
good?
much.
Thank you. We really
Anybody on our
appreciate
board?
the opportunity to be guided.
Great.
Presentation.
If you guys can stay for the next one too, that might hit.
Just as an aside, as you go through this, there's a lot of information. If you do find any questions, feel free to ask, Dr. Flanagan, or come to Tony or I, and we'll be glad to find the answers. I can't say I'll have the answer.
But we know who to ask. So,
Joe.
yes, Joe, exactly.
I would have said Joe too. Listen, I get it. That's
Even in
okay.
my day, I was going to.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, number 9, under new business, may also impact the finance committee, so if they don't mind hanging for a little bit, it'd be great to kind of get in front of that a little bit as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So, at this point, so one of the things you asked about, Mr. Bushman, certainly was the concerns about anything moving forward. So that unknown of special education, what the cost could be, or what the needs of some of our kids are, it's just out there, and it's something that we really don't know what could come down the pike. So what other communities have done is they've created a special education stabilization fund that lives in the town reserves, much like we do with our OPEB money, or help me with that, compensated absences. What else do we have? All the reserve funds, designated from free cash. So one of the things that we would like to potentially explore, and the committee's had this conversation before, and I think, and in a conversation with town minister, I think he would be willing to bring this up with the selectmen as well, is can we create a special education stabilization fund? And one of the things we talked about was taking a credit or any credit that comes back from Valley Collaborative in year one, anything that comes above that $50,000, and getting a check for that and putting that in that stabilization fund and begin to build a pot of money that is a rainy day emergency fund for the school. If a student were to move into town, all of a sudden we need to renovate a bathroom for $100,000. And that's not built into our budget. Where do we go for that? So we want to have some kind of reserve that we can build up over the years so that we don't decimate our reserves on our budget or hit our own operation budget. So we're looking to build a special education stabilization fund. The mechanism for that would require that the school committee make a request when we go before the selectmen to access the funding. But I think it's just logical to have that safety net in place so we're not crushing an operational budget. So as we look to build this budget and continue down the road and have these conversations, I think that's one thing that we want to keep in the front of our mind and not let it get, put by the wayside. How do we get the language so that we can have a special education stabilization fund? It would certainly have to go to town meeting, but it would be great to go to town meeting saying that the school committee and the FinCom and the selectmen all support this concept, just so that we're not compromising what we currently do for kids because of unanticipated costs.
I can say personally, Dr. Flanagan, I applaud your effort in that because having served on 2 different school committees, I've seen students come in middle of the year, both in Melrose and here, and it can be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 cost. As well as I think one year we had 22 students come in based on one of the projects that had English as a secondary language, so we had to provide that. And middle of the year, as we all know, it's very difficult to make changes in your budget at that point, but you own the students and you have to provide the services.
Right.
So I applaud your efforts. And
If I might add also, I applaud it too. I also have a question. There's net rental income coming in from the school, from the
Correct.
school, correct?
Correct.
And at the end of the year, that's split between the town and the school. Don't you get?
That goes in our reserves. Joe, you want to speak to the Lakeview
Sure.
lease?
So the way the lease was presented to the voters and voted in by the voters is half of the lease money each year is dedicated to operating the building for all of the costs associated with the building. The other half of that lease revenue goes into the revolving fund for capital improvements to any school building in the district.
Okay,
So
I misunderstood how that worked.
So to that end, that's what we talked about earlier. So there's approximately $382,000 in that account. So that would be the money that we use if we get an accelerated repair from the MSBA to pay for all new windows at the Lakeview. So that's why it wouldn't hit the taxpayers.
Oh, that was the bucket.
That's the money we would use.
That was the bucket of money
Yes.
you would use.
Yep.
And that's enough money to put all the windows in Lakeview School.
If we get
With the
50%
repair.
reimbursement from the MSBA, potentially. And again, if it didn't come in, we would go phase 1, phase 2 and not hit the taxpayers. And just so you know, that's also the money that we used to deconstruct the portables and redo this area out here. And we use that for capital projects around the district, so been very helpful. When you have a $30,000 piston that goes in an elevator, we go there. So there's about $382,000 there, and we want to earmark that for a project at Lakeview right now.
And again, I don't want to draw any conclusions, but with that 50% reimbursement, how long does the state have you? You have to have that as a school.
I'm not sure I understand the question. How long does the state have us?
There was an issue, remember when we did the roof over there, that because we
Bonded over
Close
20
the-
years?
Yeah,
closed the school.
Okay.
you have to reimburse the state.
Don't draw any conclusions from my
I
question.
hear what you're saying. No, I hear what you're saying.
Someone asked me.
Yep.
But there
It's a fair question. I don't have the answer, but it's a fair question.
That's what I was alluding to about
right.
before.
I mean, that was
The state gave us reimbursement
Yep.
for what happened on the roof. So there's a certain period of time
Yep.
that you've got to at least have one office in there for the school,
Yep.
don't you?
Yes, yeah, so again, we're fortunate that Valley wants to put money into the school as well and have that as a long-term project. So we have a long-term potential tenant, which is great.
Are we talking 10, 20 years or? what?
10 was what she brought up to me, for sure.
That would, I think, cover the MSBA.
See if you can put some-
I understand the
see if
question,
you
I
can
don't,
put some
yeah,
more fives in there.
do my best.
But if we could use the lease money from that school to rebuild that school, so it doesn't cost us a dime, it's win-win for everybody.
And it allows us to do other projects in the district without
Yeah, as
having
long
to go
as
back.
someone else is paying, not the taxpayer.
Not the taxpayers.
I'm good with that.
We wouldn't go to the taxpayers knowing that we want a middle school at some point and you can't hit up the same people. We get it. And I think, you know,
That's my actual point.
I think the whole budget process, we've been about, we're one community building a budget together, and I think that's been our approach from the get-go, so.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say that the administration is looking at all the different ways they can find revenue by leasing that building. It could have sat there, it could be sitting there empty, like a lot of other school buildings in the
Yeah.
town, and causing problems. But it's leased, it's being used, the upkeep is done with that. We're trying to find foreign exchange programs where we bring in students that will pay us money to come to school in Tyngsborough. Just a couple more dollars that will help the budget. It's not going to hurt any of the educational functions of the school, but it just gives some more money to be able to run a science lab or do something more. So that they're,
If those students come in, they would pay for themselves if they come?
Yes,
Yes.
the parents pay the
Tuition.
tuition
it's essentially a tuition
You could
base
get enough tuition to cover what it costs
and
easily.
more.
and more.
And more.
So
And then we need families to volunteer to take these kids in, so.
That you may find.
Yeah.
I have a wet basement.
But I would also like to see when we're looking at the Special Education Stabilization Fund
Mhm.
is if we put in $10,000, $20,000, I would actually like to see the town match our contribution out of free cash and build that up quicker, even if it's for 5 years or 7 years or something like that, to where we get to an agreed upon level. That would keep us in good standings for a while.
Sure,
So I'd like to see that as well.
great, so we'll continue discussion on that then, at the town.
When will you be presenting your budget to the select?
So at the February 26th, so moving forward, the timeline is that the committee would have a few weeks to review this, and at our next meeting on February 6th, hopefully adopt this initial budget. With the committee's blessing, I will share these books with the town administrator tomorrow, so that he can also get the copies to the selectmen. And then on February 26th, at Tri-Board is when we'll be doing a presentation, probably a highlight of this book, and answer any questions at that point as well.
I'd like to thank you guys for coming out tonight on this cold,
I
dark,
appreciate
rainy
it,
night.
thank you.
We appreciate the
Appreciate
invitation.
Yeah,
presentation.
absolutely. I don't think we communicate enough as different boards, so I think it's a good opportunity. I'd also like to thank the entire administration for coming out this evening, and for all the work you guys did in help putting this together. When we talk about reducing headcount by 10, we obviously took this serious, and so did they. These are people's lives we're talking about. It's their livelihoods, their families. So when we asked Dr. Flanagan and Dr. Branco, Mr. Messina, and our administration to give us the budget that we want, that we need. We don't want a wants budget that we're gonna have to go fight. Tell us what you need. I will fight for every single dime of that 59,000, for the record. They did their homework. They cut where they needed to cut, and I don't think we're asking for too much.
I'd also like to see the fight on the state level,
Absolutely.
State senator
Yes.
and
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think I've shared with you guys, particularly from last year's tri-board with them. I mean, I'd love to write legislation and say, have the charter schools pay us back for special ed and busing costs.
Absolutely.
Because that's coming out of our town budgets, and not just ours, but everyone's.
That Medicaid reimbursement could adjust it right here. the 65%, 72% could be that difference right there. So it's certainly worth sending a letter.
So take a motion to adjourn then. Motion by Derek, second by Bill, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, that carries 3-0. We are adjourned, and thank you.
All right, thank you
Happy
again
to
for
answer any
coming out
questions.
this
Thank you.
evening. Yes. Yeah, we'll give them a second to get their stuff together.
Just Joe. Just Joe.
No, it's not just Joe. It's the Joe. And we're gonna discuss finance, and the finance committee's leaving.
Too much finance.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming. Be careful driving home. All right, Mr. Messina, it's all you.
Just Joe's on now.
Just Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Signing of bills, there were 11 bill warrants presented to the committee tonight. The warrant numbers, accounts, and amounts are in your Google Drive. In addition to that, no payroll tonight. We'll do catch up on payroll at your next meeting. And also in Drive is the December 2017 financial package, which includes the school committee's budget as of December, the school revolving account balances, as well as the student account balances. And that is it for the financial package. Throw enrollment to you.
All right, Tyngsborough Elementary School, 808. Tyngsborough Middle School, 420. Tyngsborough High School, 491. Out of District 21 for a total of 1,740 total students. Anything else, Mr. Messina?
That's it. Oh, actually, no. I'll retract that. That's it. And just an update on the food service bid. We had our mandatory pre-bid meeting, which was a requirement for anybody submitting a bid. We had 2 vendors come to that meeting, Whitson's being one of them, as well as a relatively newcomer to Massachusetts, a company called Cafe Services. I sort of think that they will be submitting a bid as well on February 9th. So at your next meeting, I will be seeking 3 school committee members to take a look at, if we do get multiple bids, take a look at the bids. We have a scoring sheet and weigh them out, decide if they're close enough to bring them both in to do presentations, or if we just need to score them. If we can have the committees at that, the volunteers at that meeting. The 9th is the deadline for the bids, and then if we do get multiple bids, we can go forward.
Will they be bringing samples of food
That is,
with them?
well, last time we had one, Whitson's did bring samples, and coincidentally, we switched from Chatwell's to Whitson's at that meeting, so.
So now we'll be fighting over who's going to be on the committee. So we can get a meal. All right, do we need 3 people today, or?
No, we can do that
We
at the
can do
next
that
meeting.
at another
We'll put it on the agenda.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
School committee discussion.
Not this time.
Good. Mr. Moran?
Good evening, thank you.
Good evening. Mr. Mitchell?
Trivia night is the February 4th, Friday. I think it's the 4th. So everybody come out and support the TST. Second.
The 4th
One
is
of
the
those.
Super Bowl. The Patriots are playing on the 4th.
It's the same thing.
It's
Come on.
a Super Bowl of trivia.
There
We'll
you
be on
go.
Friday the 4th. Second.
February 2nd. Please come out. I think it's at the Sportsman's Club. I think. Look on the website.
I would like to thank Mr. Triakis and his staff for the fantastic job that they did in getting the schools ready to open up with just a 2-hour delay. It was very dangerous out there and proven by all the videos posted in many different places today. So thank you very much.
Just a reminder, we were asked to take a group picture for the yearbook, so Corey, don't run off.
But
Single out
Rob,
you.
you can run
I
off.
can let you go.
Yeah, Rob.
You don't want me in the picture.
I'm all set.
Anything else? Who's perfect?
All set, thank you.
Dr. Branco?
Just thanks to the administrative team for coming out tonight, and, these decisions that we make moving forward are difficult, and they've worked very hard to be as creative as possible, and they're the ones that are going to carry out a lot of these decisions, so I appreciate their support and their effort throughout this process.
Absolutely. We do have a need for executive session. I would like to say thank you for delaying school 2 hours this morning. Some other districts didn't make such a good decision, and
Wasn't his.
they went slip sliding away. But we do have a need for executive session this evening
Motion,
to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body as declared by the chair. We will return from executive session only to adjourn our regular session meeting. This requires a roll call.
make that motion.
Oh, Mo,
I will second.
Tony,
In favor?
In favor.
in favor.
In favor.
You got a question?
I did. Should we take a recess and take the picture before we go into executive session?
No, we can do that.
Okay.
Jeez.
Just asking.
Pictures. In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
All right. Thank you and have a good night.